Okay. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another Mahamudra for the People. It's wonderful to be here with everybody. Um, yeah, and let's see. And Merry Christmas for those who engage in that. I hope, that holiday, even if you just had some time off, I hope you enjoyed that. And here we find ourselves in this odd little bardo between that holiday and, this other day, which is just another day, New Year's. And it's a real pleasure to be here with everybody. So we're going to continue with the third Karmapa's Mahamudra aspiration prayer. However, just as a kind of point of beginning, perhaps we could sit for just about 10 minutes or so. Um, and, kind of going in, I guess, with a sense of flow, I suppose you could say, from the instructions that we've used. Really trying to spend some time settling into this mind that is essentially stainless, a mind that cannot be named, an experience of mind that is vast, profoundly present, always fresh, the same mind of all the Karmapas, the same mind of all the Buddhas, right? This sense of timeless awareness that is at our core the essence of our being, who we are, etc. And if we want to, we can use Tilopa's 6 nails, letting go of the past. So take a moment to allow yourself to settle into a meditative state, letting go completely of the past, every moment right before this. Then simultaneously letting go of the future, letting go of anything from, the banalities of later today to New Year's resolutions and things like that. And then letting go of this particular moment having a valence or a specific need to be a particular way, right? Just let go of the present, let go of ideas about right now. Right? And maybe let go of nowness. Right? And don't try to control this experience of mind, and don't try to figure anything out. Allow yourself to rest simply, freshly, with ease, and pulse it like this for 10 minutes. right, and here we are. So, so for those who are just joining us for this teaching on Third Karmapa's Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer, I've been using the Nalanda Bodhi Publications book, Songs of the Karmapas. Just quite, it's a nice little text. It's 84 pages or so. Has a variety of songs and some short instructions by a variety of the Karmapas. So the translation is a little different than if you're used to, like, for example, the Nalanda Translation Committee's translation. And so far we've done up to stanza 11. And so we're going to continue from stanza 12. And just as a brief recap, Rangjung Dorje, third Karmapa, who's a great Mahamudra and Dzogchen, and master of many things, Che, Tsalung Chokor, all of these things. In this aspiration prayer is really introducing the Mahamudra view, right? Not only the view, but to some extent, the practice of this specific approach, and in addition to laying out the view, there's a lot that he has mentioned already about the kind of simultaneous arising of the Mahamudra view as being identical to that as we find in Dzogchen and Madhyamaka, etc. So, and then these kind of pith instructions. So I'll just kind of step back to just go over stanza 11 again, just as a way of kind of having a nice, easy on-ramp. And so Rangjung Dorje says, "It is not non-existent. Even the victorious ones do not see it. It is not non-existent. It is the basis of all of samsara and nirvana. It is not the contradiction of being both. It is a middle way path of union. May we realize the mind's essential reality free from extremes." So moving on to stanza 12. "No name can show it is this. No refutation can demonstrate it is not that. May we gain certainty in the essential nature beyond intellect, in the uncreated and genuine reality's ultimate limit." Right? And so this is the kind of thing that we can experience when we begin to try to look for mind. Right? Where is it? Right? So if we, this can be done analytically in terms of actually looking, and analyzing, is my arm, mind, right? No. Are my fingers, mind? No. My palm, mind? No. Is it in my brain? Only? No. Is it in my heart only? No. Is it in this room? Yes. Is it not outside this room? So outside this building I happen to be in? No, it's outside of that too. Right? And so looking, where is this? Where is this? And it's not a thing, right? So we can't point it out to others. Right? And it's not nothing. So we can't not point it out. And there's this one line, may we gain certainty in the essential nature beyond intellect, right? Which is kind of the point here, is that this is not something that there is just a label or a concept that can be given. Here you are, take it. This is Mahamudra, right? It's beyond that, right? This is really has to be done experientially. And this kind of connects to these passages that we find attributed to the Buddha, where the Buddha says, I can't, essentially, I can't do this for you. I can't make you have this experience. If this was a product of intellect, then there would be an app, like a Mahamudra app, and we could download it for $5.99 and we would have no problems. But because that doesn't exist, because the mind and Mahamudra cannot be, it's not a product of the intellect, right? It is not a product of the compounded processes, intellectual processes. We can't do that, right? So this means we need to distill this like alchemists, from our own practice. So Wangjung Dorje continues by saying in stanza 13, not realizing simply this, one circles in the ocean of samsara. When one realizes simply this, there is no other enlightenment. Everything is in this, and there is nothing that is not. May we realize essential reality, the underlying nature of the ground of all. And so, not simply recognizing this, and not simply recognizing that this cannot be contained in, through or described essentially very well through intellectual processes. We wander endlessly through samsara. I don't have lots of books around me right now because I've cleaned up the past couple of days, but I have this pecha, right? All of these texts, right? So I don't need this at all because I have the direct experience of mind, technically. What else do I have? I have all sorts of weird things here, but oh, look, I have this. This is big. So I have this, right? The Life of Shabkar. Oh, so thick. Oh, so many pages, right? How many pages? Something like over 700 pages. I don't need this because I have the direct experience of Mahamudra. I don't have anything else to use. I'm sorry. Well, I have a phone, right? So this phone has so much stuff. There's so many Dharma texts, saved on apps. I don't need this. We don't need anything, We wander in samsara, going. We don't trust ourselves, right? We definitely don't trust what people tell us. Otherwise, we would, we would just take that one instruction, right? We would, and this is the hard thing, right? It's hard to, takes time, let's say, to develop the confidence and a sense of certainty that it is all right here, right? Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be taken away. Not realizing this, one circles in the ocean of samsara. When one realizes simply this, there is no other enlightenment. Everything is this, and there is nothing that is not. May we realize essential reality, the underlying ground of all. And so, of course, we can be extreme with everything we do if we want, right? And the extreme thing to do would be to take all your Dharma books and burn them or give them away or something. And, I think all of us at one point or another have given things away because we kind of realize, okay, I've got too much, whatever, like I need to pare this down, not because, necessarily I don't have room for it, but maybe because I'm developing an unrealistic dependency, right? On, rooted in not trusting the direct experience of mind. And I think it behooves all of us to ask ourselves, at what point do we really want this experience for ourselves? And which means, when are we going to kind of steal from some like warlord like language you find sometimes in these Vajrayana poems, like when are we going to raise the ground of samsara and plant the victory banner of awakening, right? The kind of the style of poetry is kind of common, right? But when are we just going to put the stake in the ground and just say no now, now? I'm going to stop externalizing. I'm going to stop looking for more things, more explanations, more clear, more abbreviated, more complex, right? It's all there, but at some point, we have to, in our own way, in our own time, for our own reasons, settle into a commitment to being able to experience this directly, right? And maybe put down constantly seeking elsewhere. And so then Karmapa moves on to say, appearance is mind and emptiness is mind. Realization is mind and confusion is also one's mind. Arising is mind, cessation too is mind. May we determine that all superimpositions are mind. Our fear is mind, our certainty is mind. Our love is mind, our isolation is mind. Our loneliness is mind. Our joyfulness is mind. Our anger is mind. Our jealousy is mind. Our rage is mind. Our lust is mind. Our insatiability is mind. Our great contentment is mind. Everything that is experienced is the ground of Mahamudra. We don't need to push things away. We don't need to, I don't have any, I do have this. Okay, so I have this like Gao, this little Gao, right? So we don't need these necessarily to go around, keeping away negative things, right? Especially if you have any interest in Che or the Shije tradition, right? Like you want to step into all of this, step into your fear, step into your anxiety, step into your loneliness, step into your mistakes, step into your brilliance, step into your power, right? All of it is Mahamudra. Everything. This is not, we can practice Mahamudra, I suppose you could say, in a religious way. And then it's all this concept, all this baggage, right? All this stuff that we're adding, right? All these things that we think we need. Or we can really practice it in this Mahasiddha style of really letting ourselves settle into every single thing we experience as being the nature of mind, as being the demonstration of mind. And for those of us who are habituated to the ways of maybe thinking or being or relating to the world that we find in the West in particular, right? There's this constant avoidance of what's really happening, right? An avoidance of what I'm feeling, or an avoidance of what I'm doing, my impact on others, an avoidance of this and an avoidance of that, constant turning away, a constant shifting, maybe you could even say, of responsibility. Right, and the beautiful thing about this kind of instruction is that the simplicity, and then this is the one. No, I mean, you find this in Dzogchen too, but Mahamudra is really quite beautiful sometimes in terms of the simplicity. Every single thing that arises, when you look around where you are, the room that you happen to be in, everything that you see, every impulse, every data set. So right now I'm looking at some plants that are quite beautiful. The experience that arises is mind. And I'm looking at shrine items, causes me to have a particular kind of experience. That too is mind. I can look at a stack of things I need to put away at some point in the next couple of days. Right? That too is experience of mind. Every single thing is Mahamudra. Every single thing. Right? Or we could not trust it, not trust the situation, not trust our experience. And then we need it to be something different. You go look somewhere else. Go hitchhiking somewhere. So appearance is mind and emptiness is mind. Appearance, right? Everything. emptiness, no big deal. We don't need to be ultra kind of unstable about this. Realization is mind, but so is confusion. Right? What does that mean? Right? This means that whatever is occurring, confusion or awareness, right? Rigpa and Sem, there's two, they're not poles, they blend, mind and awareness, mind and awareness, mind and awareness. They kind of bubble out of one another, they're interconnected, right? The point is not to separate them or isolate them, but to be able to understand the difference between Sem and Rigpa, right? To understand the difference between awareness and the natural bubbling, right? The natural churning, the natural affect of relative cognitive mind, right? The mind of logic, the mind of spatial relationships, the mind that helps us put everything together. That's fine, that kind of thinking. That is Mahamudra. The vastness of awareness is Mahamudra. All of this. Arising and cessation. So thought activity, stillness of mind. Right? The arisal of emotion, settling into stillness. All this. And then I'll read one more stanza, and then maybe we could settle into a little bit of meditation. Unspoiled by meditation, where thoughts are deliberate and striving, unmoved by the winds of ordinary commotion, knowing how to settle naturally in the uncontrived state, may we be skilled at and sustain the practices revealing mind's true reality. So, I'm going to repeat this one more time. Unspoiled by meditation, where thoughts are deliberate and striving. And so this meditation, which is, grasping at a particular outcome. They say that Mahamudra is this experience of vastness. So, forcing myself to have a kind of experience of vastness, whatever that might feel like or be like. It's preferencing space over what is actually happening. Whatever that could be. That could be thought activity, that could be busyness, we could be tired, so then there's kind of, exhaustion coming in. Unmoved by the winds of ordinary commotion, right? So all of the ordinary commotion. There's sounds in reaction to sound. There's thoughts in reaction to thoughts, and what have you. Knowing how to settle naturally in the uncontrived native state, may we be skilled at and sustain the practices revealing mind's true reality. And so within the context of Mahamudra, this, resting into this, uncontrived state or settling into this is done through a couple of steps, right? So the first formal step is shamatha, right? And I want to be careful, though, to kind of not fall into this trap that I think is kind of a little prevalent, especially these days, where Mahamudra is really kind of like described in a very kind of sometimes overly formulaic way, which makes it feel kind of stodgy. Yes, yeah. I'll just finish my thought, and then we can ask a question. But this process of shamatha leading into this natural awareness of vipassana, and the union of both of these, this very natural, relaxed, settled wakefulness, is really what Mahamudra is. And so this combination of being able to rest into quiescence without forcing, right? Without worrying about breath. In the beginning, yes, some of these exercises are needed. Focusing on one's breath, sometimes counting breath, or focusing on a physical object or a visualized object. Or really just focusing on the experience of mind itself, right? Letting this wakefulness be the thing that we settle into. And then being very relaxed in opening up to the wakefulness, right? This sense of awareness, this dynamic openness, right? And when we're able to settle into this, right? This is what is being pointed out here. Here, we are unspoiled by meditation, where thoughts are deliberate and striving, because everything is able to just be, quote unquote, brought into practice. Thought activity, stillness, busyness, elaboration. It's as if we're holding in a very, very light and relaxed way whatever is happening. And this causes the mind, on average, you could say, to settle of its own accord, to settle into its own nature, which is spacious, non-referential, right? Non-analytical, into this open, wide space. Yeah, so Gendon.
Thank you. I'm curious about, I think I heard that phrase in the text translated as knowing how to rest. And I wonder if the word there, how did the Nalanda Bodhi translate that particular phrase? Would you say it again?
Yes, yeah. So, so unspoiled by meditation, where thoughts are deliberate and striving, unmoved by the winds of ordinary commotion, knowing how to settle naturally in the uncontrived native state. May we be skilled at and sustain the practices revealing mind's true reality.
I wonder if that particular phrase, like settle into uncontrived, is that it? Settle into, or the idea of resting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the Tibetan word for that, or like, what is?
Yeah, I don't have the Tibetan text in front of me.
It just seems like that particular verb, maybe adjective, I don't know, seems so beautiful, and maybe like one that I'm curious if it's sort of like a particular Buddhist kind of idea, knowing how to rest, like a particular Tibetan Buddhist idea, or if it's more poetic license on Rangjung Dorje's part. I just feel really curious about that, and I really appreciate that part in the text a lot, and the idea of rest I find really compelling, and maybe I just want to ask for more or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. With translation work, and I'm not, super adept at this, but I am working on translating a Mahamudra text right now. Certain words are there's not, and this could be a problem or not. I was actually also talking to a translator friend the other day, and he was half lamenting and half excited about the fact that what we have in present times is not what had existed in the past in terms of agreed upon terminology, right? So in the way it had been earlier in early Tibetan history, was that a whole series of agreed upon terminology for translation was used for terms translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, right? And so Tibetans would thus have, because the priority with respect, especially to the written language, was easy and clear translation of Buddhist material from source languages into Tibetan. And here we don't have that, right? So if you look at, you can use one dictionary, right? But if you use a variety of dictionaries, you will find a variety of different translations for a particular term. Why this is helpful sometimes is that sometimes you'll find that one translator or a translation committee will use the same series of terms for something like resting, right? And then somebody else or another committee might use naturally settling, And this is helpful too because as humans, we're such creatures of habit that we will fall into just the same use of a particular kind of etymology to the extent that it actually doesn't even mean anything. Right? I mean, even like, and I'll throw this out there as worth considering, anybody that you might like feel very strongly towards, where you typically would say, I love you, after X period of time, that phrase begins to kind of sometimes lose its meaning, right? People will know, okay, I more or less know what this person means, right? But sometimes we might not be feeling anything in particular. We're just saying it to placate people, right? Other times we truly, truly mean it, like, oh, I really, really love you, And so why this is good is because I think as practitioners, just as Rangjung Dorje is asking us to stop looking anywhere else, like, and look right at your own experience in this moment. That is the nature of mind. I think it's also helpful to get out of the habit of using these terms, even internally for ourselves, in reflecting on our practice about, oh, I just rest. Oh, it's just this. Oh, it's just that. Like, what do these things really mean, right? And the asking of these questions isn't, meant to be, like busy work or questioning the validity of particular terms. It's more to really kind of get out of our habit mind, right? Get out of the habit of our relationship to language. And sometimes we hear something differently, and it just clicks in a much different way, right? And this is also something that you kind of see also with pointing out instructions, where they're all doing the same thing, right? But the approach, the angle, if it's a less, if it hits us in a less calloused way, right? The calluses being created by unexamined relationship to language, it will be more profound.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm remembering a teaching that I received from Anipama Pema where she described, like the journey that we're going when we're looking at like the six realms or samsara in general, as making our relationship to it go from this to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so helpful just to see her make that gesture, kind of. And that feels like it's reminding me of this phrase, like knowing how to rest, knowing how to relax, knowing how to I can't remember what this translation was, but it's really beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that quality of kind of like knowing how to stop struggling.
Yes. Well, and so in this particular line, right, knowing how to settle naturally in the uncontrived native state. So native, I mean, we could go so many places with this, right? We could say, like, into your indigenous awakening, right? This is basically what is being pointed out here is, settling into that which is your original face, that which is your original nature, that which is your Buddha nature, that which is your fundamental wakefulness, right? That which is your fundamental perfection. Like, there's no end, right? But the whole point of settling or resting or easing into or relaxing, like, this is not like it's not this, it's that, right? It's like it's a practice of opening up to a process of our own natural perfection, our own basic wakefulness. Right? Basic is basic not in the sense of small and basic in that way, but basic in terms of its fundamental basis. Right? It is the foundation. Right? It's not basic because it's tiny or basic because it's one small building block. It's basic because it is the base. Right? It is what is really going on. And so there is this gentle quality of just coming home, I think these, I mean, I'm not uh even though I'm doing a little translation work, I'm not particularly interested in it. What I'm more interested in is um translating the meaning into like idiomatic systems that speak to where people are at in the moment, right? The kind of like a systematized English set of vocabulary for Tibetan words is very not interesting to me, but creating the ground for these to be kind of understood, even if there needs to be quite a bit of extrapolation to be able to make it, that meaning click, like that is what's super exciting for me, at least. And so, I was reading somebody's biography. I can't remember who it was. But anyway, they were described as a translator and an interpreter of Tibetan texts. And that I really liked, right? Because like translation, has this assumption of one-to-one transference, right? Interpretive work is now I get into like interpretive dance, right? Interpretive meditation practice, interpretive being, right? Because and that's what we're doing, right? Like our meditation is inherently interpretive because the experiences that are arising, everything from physical sensation to emotional sensation to long distant memory bubbling from the alaya consciousness to everything, one for one kind of translation of a text is actually maybe in like a Western cultural context makes sense, but maybe only in that context. And perhaps only in a Western cultural context of a particular age that we have moved out of even. These things are all worth considering. And the truth is that the problem also with these kinds of topics is that everybody has a dog in one particular kind of argument here. So I would venture to guess that there is not, as much as people will claim that there is a one fundamental proper way of doing this. I fundamentally disagree with that. There's, just as I say, there are as many ways to enlightenment as there are people, or there are 84,000, because that seems like such a big number. But really, there are billions and billions of ways to awakening. I'm sure there are millions and millions, if not billions, of ways of interpreting, even the simplicity that Rangjung Dorje is talking about. Like, but homecoming is great because, this is exactly what we're doing, right? We're coming back to our original state, coming back to our original face, and learning how to settle, out of this kind of, anxious analysis. This can go any which way, right? I mean, we could take it in the direction of like whiteness equals samsara. So then it's like the replication of, the manifestation of whiteness in terms of self and other, right? Whiteness in relationship to time, whiteness in relationship to property, right? Every single thing, colonialism, right? Like what, and then there will be people who say, well, that's not Dharma, like no, nobody talked about that stuff. But it is Dharma because this is all about freeing ourselves from patterned thinking, right? Habituation. And so you can be habituated at the top end of power, and you can be habituated at the bottom end of power, right? But it doesn't really matter. Both beings are totally habituated, and everybody in between is habituated too. So to break free from that into this experience of freshness, coming back to our natural state, is essentially a way of uh, liberating ourselves and liberating the system at the same time, whatever system that is. It could be a political system, it could be a conceptual system, it could be a scientific system. One of my teachers was telling me, oh yeah, the biggest problem facing all sentient beings is education, like the education process. And they're not making this point that getting rid of education is going to be the thing that liberates people, but it's a form of habituation just like any other thing. It's a language. So anyway, blah 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 blah. I'm getting off topic, but I was talking with Gyaltsen Rinpoche once about translating, and he said translating and learning Tibetan, and I was like, Rinpoche, like, should I learn Tibetan? And he was like, oh well, you already know how to suffer in English. Why do you need to learn how to suffer in Tibetan? And he's right. And yet, it's still good. A different teacher was like, oh, it's good for you to translate this because, you'll really kind of get into, the nitty gritty of trying to capture Mahamudra, right? It's like trying to chase a mirage, right? And to chase it with language. So anyway, but I want to thank you for asking the question, and I think that it really points out, though, like even Talopa's 6 nails. What does it truly mean to let go of the past, right? Truly, and what does it mean in our body to truly let go? Right? What does it truly mean to let go of the future? Right? And yes, we have words that say, let go of the future, right? But to truly, for ourselves, individually, let go of expectation, right? Let go of preferred outcome, let go of fear of outcome, right? Let go of anxiety of outcome. So all of this is kind of getting to what you're talking about, Gindan. Like, in order to do this, we need to relax, right? We're kind of extricating ourselves from a considerable amount of tension, right? A considerable amount of tension, which, what is it rooted in? It's just rooted in ideas and concepts, expectations, right? It's as if we are letting ghosts control us, ghosts of all the stuff that happened before that's over. Yes, there can be implications of things, reactions created by what has happened in the past, but the specific events of the past are finished. They can't come back. That which may be coming our way or not, who knows? Right? Why are we exerting so much energy, investing so much time into something that may never happen? There's no guarantee anything will happen. I sneezed really hard today earlier, and shortly thereafter got a headache. And I was like, oh, I wonder, and I'm not a hypochondriac, but I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm having an aneurysm, just very briefly, just that thought. And I was like, oh, shoot, I might be dead, like, in an hour. And my family's out today, so maybe, they'll come home and find me dead. And, then it passed. But like, you're just this play of thoughts, anxieties, fears, it's all irrational, right? It's all based in super, weird stuff. So to just ease out of that, to not control. I mean, this is interesting too, because every so often, like my friend who's this translator was like, yeah, like it really sucks that we don't have like a standard form of, translation. And it does get a little inconvenient because you take something like the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, or, the four immeasurables, or any of these kind of, the Dewachan aspiration prayer. So you get used to one, and then you switch to a text used by another Sangha, and then you're like, oh my God, this one doesn't roll off the tongue like the other one does, or whatever. But then he was like, but this is actually a good thing, because it means that we can hit, like I was saying before, like you just hit points in a different way. It's like going to one masseuse and then the next week going to a different masseuse, and they're not going to be the same, right? How they use their hands are the same. It won't be the same. What they preference won't be the same. All of this. So not controlling, and then of course not trying to figure anything out. And this is especially difficult because in our culture we are rewarded on average by trying to figure things out, some of which don't need to be figured out. It's a lot of waste of energy. It's just allowing ourselves to settle into simplicity, and maybe a little bit of being quiet, which I'm not doing right now. So maybe we'll do one more stanza, and then we'll sit. So Rangjung Dorje goes on to say, with the waves of coarse and subtle thoughts dissolving in their own place, the placid river of mind gently comes to rest. Free of the silt and mire of dullness and torpor, may the ocean of calm abiding be steady and uninterrupted. So, with the waves of coarse and subtle thoughts dissolving in their own place, the placid river of mind gently comes to rest. Free of the silt and mire of dullness and torpor, may the ocean of calm abiding be steady and undisturbed. Right, so I'm going to invite everybody now to sit for 10 minutes and just do that. Allow the silt to settle, or the snow globe of your busy mind settle into ease. We'll sit like this for 10 minutes. So Rangjung Dorje continues by urging us or suggesting to us to look again and again at the mind that cannot be looked at. Unseeable reality is seen vividly, just as it is, cutting through all doubts about whether it is or is not. May we unmistakably recognize our own face. So looking again and again at the mind or a mind or the mind that cannot be looked at. Unseeable reality is seen vividly, just as it is. So we'll pause right there. This is a little bit kind of like, the impact of like creation and completion stage practices. So generation of oneself as a particular yidam, for example. So there's some kind of effort / even artifice, so to speak, with respect to arising as a particular deity, reciting the mantra, hearing all sound as the deity's either speech, right, or the sound of the mandala, and the location that one is in as the place of the abode of the deity, as it were, and then mind being that way too, right? And so there's this easeful settling into that experience, opening up to the kind of dynamic qualities of that particular form of a Buddha, Bodhisattva, or whomever, and then the whole thing dissolving at the end of the practice, right, and resting into the non-dual state, or resting non-conceptually into the nature of awareness. So this creation and completion, it's like a wave function, right? Coming up, well, perhaps you could say, like with increased complexity, and then dissolving into simplicity. Coming up, going down, coming up, going down. Creation, the elaboration of all of this, power of it, to some extent that we could even say the transcendence of it, and then dissolving into the ordinariness of Mahamudra or Dzogchen. And so with this, right, it's not even necessarily that we need to be, coming back to looking specifically for the mind that cannot be found, or as it says, looking again and again at the mind that cannot be looked at. Unseeable reality is seen vividly, just as it is. We're not necessarily looking for anything, but just the process of coming back into the direct experience of the placelessness, of the sourcelessness, of the edgelessness of our original face. Right? Just falling back into this experience over and over and over again has a way of transforming our experience in the moment, has a way of transforming our relationship to self and other, our relationship to time, our relationship to the path even. Has a profound way of changing our relationship to simplicity, because we just come back to it. And again, in our kind of postmodern Western way of going about doing things, everything that we tend to do is so transactional in nature that we expect, it's got to be done now. Like, I did this, I sat in this meditation, I did 1 week of it. Where the hell is my enlightenment? Or, oh, I've been doing this for, a year. Why am I not awakened? And this is this transactional relationship. It's this demand, this kind of hostage situation that we're constantly in, where, we're holding the gun of expectation at the situation, and we want the outcome now, right? And really what is being pointed out here is that all we need to do is engage the process, and the process does the work for us. But we really have to, sever, or if we're going to use like tantric language, we need to kill and maim and murder expectation, right? We need to kill and maim and murder, that hard, rough edge that wants something now. And what does it want? It wants the thing that's always been there. It wants the thing that was there before we were born, that will be there after we die, that will be there before and after our next existence, and before and after the one after that, and before and after the one after that. And so just letting go, let go completely, And we're always going to bubble up with I. Let go of that. I, tightness, 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 tightness. Relax into the process. I. We're really deconditioning ourselves through this practice. Cutting through all doubts about whether it is or is not. May we recognize, or unmistakably recognize, our own face. Is it? Is it? Is it? Is it not? Is it not? Is it not? Settle. Just relax. And he goes on to say, looking at objects, there are no objects. There seem to be mind. Looking at mind, there is no mind. It is empty of essence. Looking at both, clinging to duality as self-liberated. May we realize mind's abiding nature, luminous clarity. Looking at objects, there are no objects. There seem to be mind. Looking at mind, there is no mind. It is empty of essence. So letting ourselves slip out from between all of the heavy concept, letting ourselves slip out of this, all of this, right? This fleshy mass, all these different fleshy masses here. Some I can't see because their cameras are not on, but I know there's a fleshy mass behind each name, right? This point of orientation, the seriousness of what it means to be me. I'm so serious. We're all so serious. Everything is serious. Everything is ideas. Just let go. Let go into the direct experience of what is. Let go. And let go and see what's there. Looking at both, clinging to duality itself as liberated. May we realize mind's abiding nature, luminous clarity. All right, we'll do one more just because I love this one. And then I'm going to mark this. And then we can have time for questions if there are questions. So then Rongjung Dorje says, free from mental contrivance, it is Mahamudra. Free from extremes, it is the great middle way. Since it encompasses everything, it is Dzogchen. And we gain confidence, the confidence of realizing all through knowing one. Right? So I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but if you were like checking off all these boxes, oh yeah, I got my Madhyamaka down. Now it's time to practice Mahamudra. And then after Mahamudra, I'm going to do Dzogchen. Well, you're wasting your time. We're all wasting our time. So the whole point of this, right? It's so beautiful. And I love these, he's taking us down this road of like little snapshots. Free from mental contrivance, it is Mahamudra. And there's something totally beautiful about that, right? Mahamudra is this easeful, relaxed. It's like Tilopa's, Ganges Mahamudra, just hanging out on the banks of the Ganges, watching appearance go, just sitting on the dock of the bay, right? Just hanging out. So just, the flow of the Ganges goes one way, the bodies float down along that way, the boats go that way, the clouds go, the sun rises and sets, everything just happens, right? Free from extremes, it's the great middle way, right? And this is coming back, Madhyamaka. Madhyamaka, like, testing, testing, searching, looking, testing, searching between these two poles, existence, non-existence, nihilism, eternalism, etc., self and other. Since it encompasses everything, it is Dzogchen, right? This great completion, this natural fullness, this natural finishedness, right? Nothing to do. May we gain confidence, of the confidence of realizing all through knowing one. And the confidence piece is important, right? Because why, this is actually almost a little bit like the first one we started with, I think. The second one. So, stanza number 13. Not realizing simply this, one circles in the ocean of samsara, right? So by not recognizing this, we circle around in the ocean of samsara. By thinking these are all separate things we need to master, we're completely missing the point. There's that, that phrase, by knowing one, you know all of them, right? We don't need to become a master of, Mahamudra, and then a master of Madhyamaka, and then a master of Dzogchen. We just need one thing. Right? I know that's disappointing for people who want to be masters of everything. But the only reason why people want to be masters of anything is because of, ego. To be recognized, right? To be complex. We are not complex beings as humans. Like we strive for complexity, I think, when we're really insecure. And this, association of confidence with recognizing the simplicity of all three of these being the same thing is really illustrative, right? May I have the confidence to be simple? Right? May I have confidence in not having to get all puffed up, get a PhD, Yeah, it's so easy to think the more I know, the more realized I will be. That's missing the point. I understand it, I've definitely done that. The more we rest into the nature of mind, the more realized we become. The more simple everything can be. Yeah, again, a little bit like that Lojong, slogan, drive all blames into one, like drive all practices into one, drive it all into one, knowing the mind. That's the only one we need. And when we commit to that, then, well, if it's Mahamudra or if it's Madhyamaka or if it's Dzogchen, it doesn't really matter. Even though, like, the die-hard adherents of all those traditions will put their fists up and they'll fight you to the death, or at least fight you until something happens, to prove to you that their system is the best. And this is like Vajrayana 101. The constant fighting. If it's everyone's taking everyone down kind of thing. So really the only thing we need to do is just be there. Be here. It took me so long to get comfortable with that. My root teacher, I have a couple letters from her. And the one that I don't have, I've described this for folks before, so I'm repeating myself, but she had sent a letter before the last time I went to India to see her, which got lost in the mail. And she had told me, I was on the phone with her before going out to India, and she said, it's too bad that letter was lost, because that letter had the one instruction that the only one you'll ever need. But now, because it's lost, you're going to have to go through the whole path. You're going to have to, crawl around India begging for this thing and that thing and doing, all these long practices. And now I kind of understand what she was talking about, that one practice, right? Um, but I think for ourselves, and I know this is not always heard, but I don't think in the West we have sufficiently unpacked the relationship between ambition and Dharma practice. And I think that this is a huge problem because it makes this kind of simplicity um, easy to understand intellectually and very hard to palate personally, because we want more, right? We want recognition. We want to be, we want a title or a role or position or something like this. And we suffer so much that it is quite interesting that we become more interested in the complexity because we think somehow the title, the role, the function is going to quell our suffering at the expense of the simplicity. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that there's a lot of work that needs to happen in our culture to separate these out. To separate the celebrity culture, celebrity Buddhist culture, from actual Dharma practice, right? Separate the celebrity from the liberation, and to remove liberation from celebrity, because that's just confusing for people, right? And so it means, maybe we need to disrupt Buddhist media, right? It definitely means we need to disrupt, our associations. I had some time to hang out with some Buddhist celebrities recently, and it was great. It was fun and funny. And then there was a big part of me that was like, oh, this is some hardcore suffering going on. This is some hardcore suffering. When you see things in the see what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak. I think it tends to push one towards wanting to disrupt the system because of all the concept around all of this, all of this fanciness, all of this celebrity, all of this knowledge, all of the beauty of fame, and all of these things. It's very fascinating. I've been reading. If anybody wants to, actually, you should pick up Ruth Gamble's. Ruth Gamble has like two books. One is kind of a little bit of a reiteration of the first. The first was I can't remember actually the title of it, but it's about Rangjung Dorje, and the second is a kind of a biography of Rangjung Dorje, and they really get into some of the history of the complexity of his life being the first official tulku, in the Tibetan tradition, and everything, what that means in terms of fame, what that means in terms of expectation, what that means in terms of output, even on his part. Yeah. And then there's another one biography I just picked up on 10th Karmapa, which I really love him too, because his life was just even worse. Like, it was so hard. He was caught in the middle of this tremendously violent power play. He was forced into exile. The great encampment that the Karmapas used to travel with, this big tent city that crossed Tibet, was completely destroyed. Choyang, Choyang Dorje. Oops. Oh, this silly autocorrect. Yeah, Choyang Dorje. Yeah, and he was a great artist, rather unconventional artist as well. He settled in China for a good number of years, the only senior lineage holder at the time was the then Gyaltsen Rinpoche. He kind of held everything together at great, political risk. Actually, he was his uncle. He was related to the fifth Dalai Lama. That is actually kind of an interesting time. Like that Gyaltsen Rinpoche was related to the fifth Dalai Lama, and that fifth Dalai Lama was also related to uh, uh, Taranata, I think it was. So an interesting, time of a lot of political instability, especially with respect to the way the Gelugs, tried to decimate the Kajus and decimate the Jonangpas, and it's just violent time. But anyway, it's these things are interesting because our lives are so easy by comparison. We don't have like everybody we know being murdered by people with swords, and then having to go, focus on our meditation after, right? We have other things, definitely. I'm not saying there are no real traumas here, but it is humbling to read some of these stories and consider the life or death need to get enlightened, right? To experience liberation. And here, we worry about, is my story going to make it into Tricycle? Or, is anyone going to remember me when I die? Meanwhile, these other people are just being, their monasteries are being sacked and destroyed. And I was talking with a friend of mine who was telling me about this collection, a huge collection of Kaju texts that was just rediscovered. I think it was either in Sarah, either Sarah Agenda Monastery in Lhasa. All of these confiscated texts from the time of the fifth Dalai Lama have just been rediscovered within the past, not even 10 years, and people are cataloging them, and they're these exquisite treasures from the Drikung Kaju, the Karma Kaju, Drikpa Kaju, but because of the politics of the day, they destroyed the monasteries, they took the libraries, and they locked everything up. So, and we rely only on what's published by Shambhala Wisdom Publications. It's so small, it's so puny, like it is so insignificantly tiny, and it doesn't mean that our awakening will be that way, but it just means it's. I think this is a reason why simplicity is very important, because all we need is Mahamudra or Dzogchen or Madhyamaka or Yidam practice, whatever it is, right? But let us not forget how much this whole thing is still in transition. And I think the thing that's most important, in this bridge period that may not last, right? Because we as a species might not last, or this world might not last. That as a bridge, we don't need people who are famous. We need people who have Mahamudra realization in their heart, right? Or Dzogchen experience in their heart. Right? That is the only thing we need now. We don't need, to reinvent a whole thing. We need to open up to the experience of now, Amen. Are there any questions anyone might have? We're like right at time, but I'm willing to go over a little bit if folks have, some time, or or questions.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, yeah, please.
You said about not figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote down, we don't need to figure things out, but just rest in the mind. How do you put that together with being in a situation where there's decisions you have to make, and those decisions will impact on other people, and you have to figure it out?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Thank you. So most of the time, we don't need to figure it out right now. There's more space available in most situations than we may recognize. I don't think that there's necessarily a dichotomy between needing to figure things out because, you know, we need to make a decision or come up with a response to alleviate other people's suffering. With respect to not figuring it out, that instruction is mostly just for mind, right? Like, what is in the midst of, let's say, climate change, right? We need to figure that out theoretically, if we all want to live, right? And we want our you know, descendants, you know, to be able to have a relatively livable world. And so, undeniably, I agree. We need to figure that out. We need to figure out patriarchy in Vajrayana, you know, these kinds of things. And at the same time, we also need to figure out how to let go into the vastness of the experience of mind. And these two are not in opposition. It's kind of like a style or a flavor. The flavor of not trying to be overly analytical and letting space do some of the work for us, right? It is not inherently you or I or anyone here in particular who is going to solve the question, you know, these particular questions. We might have a part in that process, but I think the most dynamic way we can have a part of the process is to basically learn how to tame our minds and then be able to act, you know, sometimes simultaneous to that process, sometimes, you know, when a greater modicum of clarity is able to be experienced. You know, it's a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, you find in like, you know, social work settings. If people don't have, like, you know, basic things like food and shelter, then it's not going to be easy. For example, so we'll have like a Dharma version of this. It's not going to be easy to have people to address their spiritual needs, right? We need to make sure people have, you know, these basic things first. For ourselves too, like, you know, with some of these like meta questions, and they don't even have to be super meta questions. They can be, you know, even in terms of our personal relationships. Like, is this a relationship that is, you know, worth continuing? If we're just going to decide based on our reactivity, that will be one kind of decision, right? But if we're able to actually have a much more clear understanding of what wisdom is, from where our wisdom arises, and how wisdom flows through us, then we're going to be able to answer the question a little bit more effectively. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep. That's a good start on making more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Here in the US, we just like to let the loudest person in the room make the decisions for us. And that's not really skillful at all. That's why we had Trump.
Or the most cantankerous.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or concerns?
Yeah. You on a figuring it out note, do you have any updates on your fundraising event?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so yes and no. Yes, we had a great, lovely time. And there were a couple people there who are seem very enthusiastic, who also seem to be very well resourced. And one of them, their family they were leaving the country for a month or so we'll check in back with them when we get back or they get back. But yeah, a lot of energy. So that was just kind of like the launch announcement. And then coming January, I hope to have some guarantees about, who's going to be able to give what. I feel very, very positive about the acquisition of this property that you helped put me in touch with Richard, and once we get that slowly in process, then we can begin with the next step, next phases of it, which include creating a business plan for the distillery piece, and building dark retreat cabins, and the temple building and things like that. So
In that order?
it depends. It depends on how much you love Vajrayogini.
I'd like to prioritize the goat pastures if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, goat pastures too. But if one really likes Vajrayogini, we have to do the distillery first, probably. Yeah. So we'll see. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. But I do feel very good, and everybody was enthusiastic. And I was poking some serious fun at myself. There was an editor for Tricycle magazine who came, and he asked me to write an essay on Dark Retreat for the summer issue, because apparently nothing has ever been written for the magazine about it. So he was really kind. He emailed me first thing in the morning the following day and was like, I checked the database. There's nothing on Dark Retreat that's ever been written. So that's good. And then I have this friend who is the hostess from Mingar who's helping, and he's turned out to be an incredibly supportive resource. So we met the other day, and then we're going to be meeting, after New Year's to kind of keep going with all this. But something will happen. Definitely. Bruce asked if I could read stanza 13 again. So I'm going to do this. So not realizing simply this, one circles in the ocean of samsara. When one realizes simply this, there is no other enlightenment. Everything is this, and there is nothing that is not. May we realize essential reality, the underlying nature of the ground of all. In the simplicity of just coming right back to this, coming right back to the experience of mind. Right? We can produce all these crazy retreat centers, or all of these crazy translations, or blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't mean a single thing, right? If we can't settle into this, right? It's just, to quote Trungpa, spiritual materialism, right? Or spiritual bypassing, right? Or just feeding an unrelenting ego, right? So just letting go, getting out of our own way. So maybe with this, we can dedicate the merit for today's session. May all sentient beings be able to get out of their own way. May all sentient beings be able to recognize that this moment is the perfect moment. May all sentient beings be able to recognize that this experience of mind is Mahamudra. May all sentient beings be able to have faith and full confidence in that what we hear is the sound of Mahamudra. May all sentient beings be able to recognize that whatever is arising in the mind is Mahamudra. May all sentient beings be able to recognize that we are all the same, and that all we are is the display of Mahamudra. So thank you so much for everything and for indulging me, and more importantly, thank you for your practice and for showing up, and take good care of yourselves, and Happy New Year, and I'll see you 2023. Be well. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.